My phone slipped from my hand and hit the kitchen floor with a dull thump. Even with the cracked corner of the screen flickering, the image was still painfully clear. My daughter, Hope, in a simple white gown, laughing, glowing, standing beside a tall young man I barely recognized. A caption above it read, "Our perfect day." Our? Perfect? And where was I? If this story touched your heart, friends, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more touching stories. Thank you for being here. I swallowed hard and called her immediately, hands trembling. To my surprise, she answered on the second ring, her voice muffled by background street noise. "Hope, baby, did you get married?" "Yeah, Mama," she said casually. "Yesterday." Yesterday. My knees felt weak and I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. "Why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't I there?" "It was just small, simple, only family." Only family? The words sliced through me like ice. I stared again at that picture. On one side of the bride and groom stood Devon's parents, Franklin and Eleanor Faze, well-dressed, polished, smiling proudly. And my daughter, my only child, was smiling with them, as if they'd raised her themselves. I wanted to scream, but only silence came out. I tried calling 3 more times that day, straight to voicemail. I sent messages pretending I hadn't seen the picture, asking if she wanted to come by for dinner. Hours later, she sent a short reply. "I'm fine, Mama. We'll talk later." Later. Always later. That night, lying in bed staring at the shadows dancing across the ceiling, I felt something I had never felt before in my 67 years. Not just heartbreak, but irrelevance. A deep, hollow sense that somewhere along the way, I had stopped being a mother and had become extra, a loose thread she didn't know what to do with. Memories flashed in my mind. Her sweet 16 party I worked double shifts to pay for. The long nights sewing clothes to give her a better life. The time she turned 5 and nearly died from pneumonia, and I slept upright in a hospital chair for 2 weeks. The promise she made at 8 years old, "Mama, when I get married, you'll stand right next to me." But promises from children don't always survive adulthood. By morning, something inside me had shifted. I didn't know what it was yet. Anger, grief, or maybe a spark of something buried deeper. But I knew one thing for certain. Hope's wedding day would not be the end of this story. It was only the moment that forced me to finally open my eyes. What I discovered next, why she truly kept me out of that wedding, cut far deeper than the photo itself. For days after the wedding photo surfaced, my house felt like a museum of memories, each room echoing with a version of Hope I no longer recognized. I tried distracting myself by cleaning, sorting, cooking, anything to silence the questions circling in my mind. But memories have a way of finding you, even when you try to hide. I thought back to her college years, when the distance between us began to grow, not suddenly, but like a slow leak in a tire, barely noticeable at first, then impossible to ignore. Hope had always been a bright, ambitious girl. When she got accepted into a business program at a prestigious university, I cried with pride. I took on more cleaning jobs to help her with textbooks, rent, meals, all the things a mother wants to cover so her child can focus on dreams. But somewhere in that world of internships, networking dinners, and polished young professionals, my daughter began to shift. When she came home on weekends, her stories were filled with new people from new circles I didn't fit into. She began hesitating before introducing me at events, offering quick explanations about my work before I even opened my mouth. And then came Devon Hayes. The first night he visited for dinner, I cooked her favorites: fried chicken, cornbread, sweet tea. Devon was polite enough, but he walked through my little house as if he were touring an exhibit at a museum he didn't understand. Hope kept smoothing her dress, adjusting her voice, explaining our traditions as though they were outdated quirks. "Mama, not everyone shares everything the way we do," she whispered sharply after he left. "You ask too many personal questions." Too personal? I had only asked where he grew up, what he did for work, who raised him, questions I thought mothers were allowed to ask. But after that night, their visits became rare. When I did see them, conversations stayed on the surface, as if they were afraid deeper waters would expose something they didn't want to confront. As Hope moved in with Devin, the shift became sharper. She began spending holidays with his parents. Weekend calls turned into short text messages. My invitations were met with excuses, work meetings, dinner plans, sudden errands. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. Children grow up, they get busy, they form new families. It's normal. But normal shouldn't feel like being erased. And then came the moment I didn't recognize her at all. One afternoon, while sorting old papers in a wooden trunk, I found a letter she had written to me at 18, full of gratitude and promises that I was her hero. I held that letter in shaking hands and wondered when that girl had disappeared. Had she changed gradually? Or had I simply ignored the signs because it was easier than admitting the truth? The truth that perhaps she hadn't wanted me there for the wedding, not because the ceremony was small, not because of logistics, but because she had built a new life in which I didn't belong. That realization cracked something inside me. Not anger, not yet, but clarity. A painful, necessary clarity. But the real blow came when I finally confronted her and learned the chilling reason she left me out entirely. When Hope and Devin returned from their honeymoon, she called me as though nothing unusual had happened. Her voice was light, breezy, almost cheerful. "Mama, we're back! Cabo was amazing. Devin and I want to come over later and show you pictures." Pictures of a wedding I wasn't invited to. Still, something in me, some old reflex of motherhood, agreed. 5 o'clock is fine. The rest of the afternoon, I moved through my home like a ghost. I baked pecan Danish, brewed sweet tea, straightened throw pillows. Habit is a powerful thing. Even hurt couldn't extinguish the reflex to prepare for my child. At 5 sharp, they arrived, sun-kissed, smiling, carrying souvenir bags that rattled with trinkets. Hope hugged me quickly, the kind of hug you give someone you're fond of, but not someone whose absence broke your heart. "Look at my tan," she said, twirling. Devin offered a polite nod before sitting stiffly on the couch. We talked about Cabo, beaches, food, resorts. They showed pictures of sunsets, cocktails, boat rides, but not one picture from the wedding. Not one. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning a hole inside me. "Hope, why didn't you tell me you were getting married?" She looked down at her hands. Devin straightened his posture ever so slightly, as if preparing for impact. "It just happened really fast, Mama," she said. "You know how paperwork is. We didn't want to make a big deal out of it." "That's not the truth," I said softly. "You've dreamed of your wedding since you were a child." She flinched. "Mama, times have changed. I didn't want a dramatic ceremony. Devin's parents wanted something simple, just us. Very private, very intimate." "Intimate," I repeated. "Without your mother?" Hope let out a shallow sigh, the kind she used when she was younger and didn't want to explain herself. "Mama, you know how you can be. Emotional, overwhelming. I didn't want conflict with Devin's family. They're very particular about how things look." Devin's expression didn't change, but he didn't deny it. "How things look," I repeated slowly. "You mean I don't fit their image?" Hope didn't answer. Silence was its own confession. She reached for the bag they'd brought. "But we got you gifts." She pulled out a novelty t-shirt, a seashell necklace, and a ceramic trinket that still had a price sticker on it. Airport souvenirs. Impersonal, rushed, guilt-wrapped. "Thank you," I said. but gratitude was a foreign feeling in that moment. Hope forced a smile. "We wanted you to know we love you." Love. A word that felt cheapened by secrecy. For 2 hours, I listened to them talk about restaurants and boat tours. They avoided every meaningful topic as though truth were something fragile that might shatter if touched. Finally, when they stood to leave, Hope kissed my cheek lightly. "We'll come again soon, Mama. Take care, drive safe." I watched them walk to their car, two silhouettes merging into the world they'd built, a world I was no longer part of. When the door closed behind them, an eerie calm settled over the room. Something inside me had snapped, but not in rage, more like a string that had been pulled too tight for too long and finally broke. For the first time in my life, I realized I had a decision to make, one I had never allowed myself to even imagine before. What I decided next would set in motion the biggest shift of my entire life, and Hope never saw it coming. The night after Hope and Devin visited, I sat alone in the quiet of my living room. The souvenirs lay untouched on the coffee table, bright, cheap things that suddenly felt like symbols of everything I had become in my daughter's life. An afterthought, an obligation, an item on a checklist. For the first time in all my years as a mother, years built on sacrifice, worry, and unconditional love, I asked myself a question I had never dared to consider. What if I stopped waiting for her? What if I stopped shaping my life around someone who barely shaped hers around me? I barely slept. My mind kept drifting back to old memories. Little Hope holding my hand on her first day of school, crying into my chest when the world scared her, telling me I was the bravest mama in the world. Where had that girl gone? When had she drifted into a life where I had no chair, no place, no title beyond a polite footnote? By sunrise, something inside me had shifted completely. I realized that while Hope had made her choice the day she said only family without me, I had made none. For decades, I had been a mother first and a woman second. But now, life was offering me something rare, a blank page at 67 years old, a chance to choose myself. I walked into the kitchen, poured a strong cup of coffee, pulled out an old spiral notebook, and wrote on the first clean page, "My new life plan." Under it, I listed 3 small, mighty steps. 1. Reclaim my independence, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. My life could be more than waiting for calls that never came. 2. Start a life where I felt wanted. Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor, always talked about her sister's senior community in Decatur, a place filled with people my age, activities, support, joy. A place where no one would look at me like a burden or a charity case. 3. Build a life that wasn't centered around hope. For the first time, I let myself write that without guilt, because love without boundaries becomes self-erasure. I showered, put on my navy blue Sunday dress, and stepped out into the warm Georgia morning. My feet carried me straight to the bus stop without hesitation. I visited the residential community my neighbor always praised, the Legacy at Peachtree, and the moment I walked onto the grounds, I felt something loosen in my chest. Garden paths, laughter from an activity room, people my age chatting like old friends. A life with color, a life with room for me. The receptionist, a warm woman named Patricia, offered me a tour. She showed me apartments, small, bright, cozy. She showed me craft rooms, a chapel, a library, a dance hall. There were people laughing, cooking, knitting, dancing, living. And for the first time in a long time, I pictured myself belonging somewhere. When Patricia asked if I wanted to reserve a unit, I didn't hesitate. "I want the one with the balcony facing the garden," I said. Her smile widened. "It's one of our favorites." By the time I walked back home, the sun was beginning to set behind the oaks lining my street. In my hands were brochures, documents, forms. In my chest was something even more powerful: peace, a new beginning, a chance to breathe again. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without crying. But the moment Hope discovered I had moved out without telling her, everything exploded in ways I never expected. I moved quietly, deliberately. No announcements, no explanations, no dramatic goodbyes. For decades, my life revolved around Hope's needs, her schedules, her moods, her expectations. But this time, I chose something for myself, without asking for permission. The move to the Legacy at Peachtree happened early on a Monday morning. 2 movers loaded the modest belongings I had chosen to bring with me. I left behind clutter, memories, and the silent ache of waiting for a daughter who rarely came. As the truck pulled away, I glanced back only once. Instead of sadness, I felt gratitude for the years I had survived in that house, and relief to finally be leaving its loneliness behind. My new apartment welcomed me like a soft exhale. Light streamed through the balcony, warming the wooden floor. Birds gathered in the garden below. I unpacked slowly, savoring the quiet. My whole life had been noise, worry, chores, expectations. This silence felt sacred. By the second day, I had already attended my first community lunch and met more friendly faces than I'd seen in years. People asked about my hobbies, not my daughter. They wanted to know me, not the version of me attached to someone else. It felt strange, refreshing, tender. For the first time in my adult life, I felt seen. 3 days passed before my phone rang, and when it did, the caller ID showed an unknown number. I nearly let it go to voicemail before answering. "Mama? Mama, where are you?" Hope's voice trembled, not with anger, at least not at first, but with confusion, panic, maybe even fear. "I went by the house," she continued quickly. "It's empty. Everything's gone. The neighbors said you moved out. Why didn't you tell me? What's going on?" I took a breath, calm and steady. "I'm living somewhere new, Hope. Somewhere better for me." "Better?" she repeated. "You moved without telling me? Mama, that's not normal. Are you upset? Are you sick? Devin thinks—" "This wasn't about Devin," I interrupted gently. "It was about me." A stunned silence filled the line. "But why?" she whispered finally. "Why would you leave our home like that?" "Because it stopped feeling like home," I wanted to say. "Because you stopped visiting. Because every room held a memory of me waiting for you. Because you married without me." Instead, I said, I needed a change. "Where are you living?" she demanded, her voice tightening. "I'm coming to get you." That old familiar tone, commanding, controlling, assuming authority, slid through the phone like cold air. I didn't let it hit me this time. "I'm fine where I am," I replied. "But I'm your daughter," she cried. "You can't just disappear on me like that." The irony nearly made me laugh. She had disappeared from me long before I ever packed a box. "I didn't disappear," I said softly. "I moved forward." She inhaled sharply. "Are you punishing me? Is that what this is?" "No," I said. "This is me choosing myself." Another heavy silence. "Mama, please, just tell me where you are." Her voice broke slightly, and for the first time in a very long time, I heard not the confident woman she presented to the world, but the wounded child underneath. I hesitated, just long enough for her to feel the weight of the choice. Then I said the words that shifted everything. "I'm living at the Legacy at Peachtree." Her breath caught. "A senior community? Mama, why? Did someone convince you? Are they taking advantage of you?" "No, baby, I made this decision myself." "But we didn't even talk about it," she whispered. "I know. That's exactly why it feels right." Hope wasn't done. Her next move was far more desperate, leading to a confrontation I never saw coming. 2 days passed after the phone call, quiet and peaceful. I spent my mornings sipping coffee on the balcony, watching the older residents stroll through the garden paths. I joined a knitting class, laughed more than I expected, and even let Mr. Davis, our energetic retired PE teacher, teach me a simple dance step during Thursday's ballroom session. For the first time in years, my life had rhythm again. My body felt lighter, my heart steadier. But peace rarely goes uninterrupted. On Friday afternoon, as I returned from a crafting workshop, Patricia, the community receptionist, called out to me, "Mrs. Harrison, you have visitors waiting in the lounge, a young couple." My stomach tightened, not in fear, but in anticipation. I knew exactly who it was. Hope and Devon sat close together on one of the lounge sofas. Hope's eyes were red-rimmed, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Devon, as polished as always, had the stiff posture of someone determined to stay in control. When they saw me, Hope stood up instantly. "Mama," she rushed over, "thank God, you scared me half to death." I offered a polite smile. "I told you I was fine." "But moving like this, without a word? Mama, that's not like you." She brushed my arm anxiously. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" I sat in a chair opposite them, because it was a decision I needed to make alone. Devon leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Mrs. Harrison, we're just concerned. This place is expensive, a big change. We want to make sure you weren't pressured." Ah, there it was, the concern beneath the concern. "My finances are my responsibility," I said, keeping my voice calm, "and I can afford to live here." They exchanged a quick glance, one they probably thought I wouldn't notice. "Mama," Hope said, softly, "you should have talked to us first." "In the same way you talked to me before getting married?" I asked, gently. Hope froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She looked toward Devon as if begging him to explain something she didn't have the words for. "Mama, we didn't mean to hurt you," she said, voice trembling. We wanted things simple." "Simple," I repeated, "meaning without me." Her chin trembled. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that." Devon cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harrison, the ceremony was small. My parents—" "Your parents?" I cut in. "Your parents had more right to witness my daughter's vows than I did?" He looked away, jaw tightening. He didn't have an answer, not one he could say out loud. Hope reached for my hand. "Mama, we're here now. We came to fix this." I pulled my hand back, not harshly, just firmly enough to create a boundary I'd never drawn before. "There's nothing to fix, not in the way you're imagining." Hope's tears finally spilled over. "Don't say that, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but you're my mother. I need you." Her voice cracked, and for a second, something inside me softened. But I had learned something important in the weeks since the wedding. Needing someone is not the same as valuing them. "I will always love you," I said gently, "but love doesn't mean I have to keep accepting less than I deserve." Devon sat straighter, irritation creeping into his tone. "So what happens now? Are you cutting us out?" I met his eyes. "No, I'm simply not centering my life around people who don't center theirs around me." Hope sobbed harder. "I promise I'll do better. I'll visit more. I'll call every day. I'll make you part of everything." Promises. So many promises over the years. So many broken. "Hope, change doesn't come from promises," I said softly. "It comes from actions, consistent ones." She went quiet. "Can we at least come by again this weekend?" she asked. I shook my head gently. "No, I have plans." "You have plans?" she repeated, stunned. "Yes," I said, "with my new friends." Watching her swallow that truth was like watching the earth shift under her feet. For the first time, she understood I was no longer waiting for her. But the real test came next, when Hope tried to reclaim control in a way I never expected, and I refused her for the first time in my life.
The Saturday after our tense meeting in the lounge, I woke with an unfamiliar feeling, a quiet, steady certainty. I brewed my coffee, stepped onto my balcony, and let the morning breeze brush against my cheeks. For once, there was no weight in my chest, no waiting, no hoping for a phone call that might never come. I had plans that day: gardening club in the morning, a movie night in the community hall, and lunch with 3 women I'd grown surprisingly fond of. My life was beginning to bloom again, slow, gentle, natural. At 8:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. Hope flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. Not out of malice, just because I no longer felt compelled to drop everything for that name. Mama, finally. Listen, Devin and I talked and we really want you to come over tomorrow for dinner. We'll make something nice, a proper meal, just us. Her voice was hopeful, eager, in a way I hadn't heard in years. But beneath it, I sensed the familiar pull, the expectation that I would fold, return to old patterns, reassure her that everything was normal. I can't tomorrow, I replied gently. A stunned pause. What? Why? I have a day trip scheduled. With who? She demanded, as though my social life required her permission. Friends, I said simply. We're going to Lake Lanier. Mama, you hate long drives. I used to, I said, but I'm trying new things. She exhaled sharply. Okay, then Monday. We'll come get you. We'll bring dinner if that helps. No, baby, I said, keeping my voice firm but kind. I have plans Monday, too. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Mama, she whispered, you're busy? Every day? I'm living my life, and it's a full one. Her breath hitched. Why are you shutting me out? I almost laughed, not from humor, but from the absurdity. Hope, you shut me out long before I ever made a single plan without you. That's not fair, she snapped. You know how busy we are. You know how stressful work is. You know— Your wedding, I interrupted softly, your wedding was not about work or stress or timing. The air on the line shifted. I could almost feel her stiffen. Mama, I told you already. You excluded me, I said, not raising my voice but anchoring each word. That choice broke something. She let out a shaky exhale. So this is punishment? No, I said firmly. This is boundaries. She didn't speak. I will see you, but not on command, not out of guilt, not because you suddenly remember I exist. Another silence. This time, it was Devin who spoke in the background, soft, low, annoyed. Hope shushed him. Mama, she whispered, we're trying to fix this, but you're not making it easy. A small, sad smile tugged at my mouth. It shouldn't be easy, not after everything. She sniffed. So what do you want? Tell me what to do. I don't want words. I want consistency, respect, consideration. I want you to act like I matter before you need something from me. She inhaled sharply, not offended, but wounded in a way only truth can wound. And if I do? She asked. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. Then maybe we can build something new, but we are not going back to how it was. A long silence fell. For the first time, she truly heard me, not as the mother she could neglect without consequence, but as a woman with her own life. I'll call you later, she whispered, as if unsure of her footing for the first time. You can try, I said gently, but remember, I might not always be free. Her breath caught. The first no I had ever given her hung between us, heavy and transformative. I ended the call and stood a little straighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing my daughter. I was choosing myself. But the peace didn't last. Hope's next move involved lawyers, money, and a shocking attempt to regain control of my life.
The week after I told Hope no for the first time felt strangely peaceful. My days filled with small joys, morning walks, knitting circles, shared meals, and quiet evenings on my balcony where the breeze carried laughter from the garden below. I felt present in a way I hadn't in decades. But peace doesn't prevent storms. It only teaches you that you can survive them. On Thursday afternoon, Patricia approached me with a gentle frown. "Mrs. Harrison, you received a letter. Registered mail." Registered mail. My stomach sank. Only two kinds of people used that method: banks and lawyers. Sure enough, the envelope bore the name of a law firm, Crawford and Hayes, attorneys at law. Hayes, Devon's last name. I thanked Patricia, took the envelope to my room, and sat on the edge of my bed before opening it. My hands didn't shake, but something deep inside me tightened. Inside was a formal letter, printed neatly, cold and sterile as a hospital room. It stated, "They were concerned for my well-being. They believed I had made a sudden, uncharacteristic, major life change. They questioned whether I was being influenced. They suggested reviewing financial and medical decisions to ensure I was acting with full clarity. And the worst line of all, your daughter wishes to ensure your assets and decisions remain protected." My assets, my decisions, protected from whom? From me? I sat back, breath slowing. The insult burned deeper than the wedding ever had. I had raised a daughter who now saw me as a frail old woman incapable of choosing her own path. And worse, she had sent her husband's family lawyers after me, not to help me, not to understand me, but to control me. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Help. "Mama, did you get the letter?" I closed my eyes. Yes, I did. "I didn't want it to be scary," she said quickly. "It's just, Devon's parents thought, well, everyone thought, you're acting strange, moving without warning, spending money. We just want to make sure you're safe." Safe. Such an innocent word. Such a sharp blade underneath. "I am safe," I said calmly. "Safer than I've been in years." "Mama, you don't understand. These places are expensive. You're going to burn through your savings, and then—" "And then what?" I asked quietly. "You'd have to take care of me?" Silence. "That's what you're afraid of. Not my health, not my happiness. You're afraid I'll become your responsibility." "That's not fair," she protested. "We're just trying to help." "Help?" I repeated. "Sending a lawyer to question my capacity to make decisions? That's help?" She whispered, "I didn't mean for it to sound like that. I panicked." "Hope," I said, my voice soft but sharp enough to cut cleanly. "If you wanted to check on me, you could have just come yourself. You could have asked. You could have trusted that I know what I'm doing." More silence. Thick. Guilty. "I'm not incompetent," I continued. "I'm hurt, but I'm not incapable." Her voice cracked. "I know that. I just didn't want to lose you. You lost me when you married without me." A small, choked sound escaped her, part sob, part realization. "I'm not trying to punish you," I added gently. "I'm protecting my peace, something I should have done years ago." "But Mama, what do you want me to do?" I took a breath. For the first time since all this began, I knew exactly what to say. "I want you to stop trying to manage me and start trying to understand me." She didn't answer. "I can visit," I added softly, "if you want to talk, truly talk. No lawyers, no defenses, no excuses." Hope cried quietly. "Okay, I want to try." I believed her, a little, but trust wasn't something I could hand over like loose change anymore. But everything changed again when 6 months later, Hope sent one final letter, one that closed the chapter forever. 6 months passed. 6 months of quiet mornings, new friendships, and a freedom I never imagined I'd taste at 67. Life at the Legacy at Peachtree had settled into a gentle, nourishing rhythm. My days were filled with small joys, tending to the garden beds with Mrs. Mercedes, laughing through dance classes with Mr. Davis, sharing recipes during Sunday potlucks. Not once did I feel lonely. Hope called occasionally, not daily, not even weekly, but enough to prove she was trying. Our conversations were softer, more careful. She asked about my friends, my activities, my hobbies. She listened. She apologized often, though apologies can only reach so deep when wounds are carved into the bone. Still, I let her speak. I answered politely, but I never gave her the emotional closeness she suddenly desired. Not because I was cruel, but because protecting my peace required boundaries I had never set before. Then one morning, Patricia approached me as I sat in the courtyard sipping tea. "Mrs. Harrison," she said gently, "you have another letter. This one came by courier." A cold ripple traveled down my spine. I thanked her, took the envelope, and walked to a quiet bench beneath the magnolia tree. My hands were steady, my heart less so. The return address wasn't a law office this time. It was my daughter's. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a typed letter, neat, orderly, impersonal. Not handwritten, not emotional, not raw. Just structured words, carefully chosen. As I read, each sentence tightened something inside me. She explained that the wedding had been small to avoid tension. She wrote that Devon's parents felt a simple ceremony was best. She said involving me might have created unnecessary conflict. She insisted it had been a practical decision. Practical. No mention of how she had hurt me. No acknowledgement of my years of sacrifice. No understanding of the depth of the wound. No apology for choosing aesthetics over love. Just justification. Just efficiency. Just cold reasoning dressed as explanation. I read the letter 3 times. By the 3rd time, my hands no longer trembled. They were completely still. This wasn't a message of healing. It wasn't remorse. It wasn't connection. It was closure. Unintentional, perhaps, but final. This was the moment I realized something important. The daughter I had raised, the girl who once promised I'd always be the most important person in her life, no longer existed. She had grown into a woman shaped by different values, different priorities, a different definition of family, one that did not include me. And I had finally grown into a woman who could accept that. I folded the letter neatly, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into a wooden box in my closet, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder of how far I had come. Later that evening, as I watered the plants on my balcony, Mrs. Mercedes joined me. "You look peaceful," she said kindly. "I am, and I meant it." "Do you regret anything?" she asked gently. I thought for a moment. "I regret believing I had to wait for someone else to give me permission to have a life." She smiled. "And now?" she asked gently. "Now," I said, gazing at the soft glow of the sunset over Decatur, "I choose myself, and choosing myself has given me more peace than I ever had chasing anyone else's love." She patted my hand. "That's wisdom, Clara." It didn't feel like wisdom. It felt like survival and rebirth. Hope may call again one day. She may try to rebuild, or she may not, but either way, I will be fine. I am no longer the woman who lived on the crumbs of someone else's affection. I am a woman who found her worth, not in her daughter's approval, but in her own reflection. And that is a love story too. One I wish I'd learned sooner. One I hope other mothers learn without breaking first. And if you've ever felt forgotten, overlooked, or pushed aside, you may find your own beginning the moment you finally choose yourself. If today's story touched your heart or kept you hooked, you can show your love by sending a super thanks. Your support helps me continue creating more powerful life stories for you. Thank you truly for always being so kind and supportive. I can't wait to read your thoughts about this story. On your screen right now, you'll find 2 new stories that I highly recommend, filled with emotions, twists, and lessons. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for many more inspiring life stories. Until the next one, sending you love, respect, and gratitude. See you in the next story.